everything you're missing with your jab. This video is going to help you go beyond the basics and the foundation of the jab. If you haven't already watched my video going over the basics and the foundation of the jab, you need to do so. I'll try to remember to put it down in the link below. Go check it out, the anatomy of the jab, and also I've done a lot of work on the jab. But this video is largely inspired by the feedback I've been getting in the forum that I've been putting on the comments and pinning at the top of my videos, where I'm going to gather more and more information from all you guys and use that to laser target and focus this content to directly help you. So if you haven't already, click on that form below, fill that out. By the way, who am I if you don't know who I am? Coach Keith Keppner, professional amateur boxing coach for 15 plus years, taken many people from complete zero, never putting on a pair of boxing gloves, and brought them to elite levels. I was coached as a fighter and mentored as a coach by my father, Doc Keppner, who's a professional boxing coach for multiple decades. He was coached as a fighter and mentored as a coach under Chuck Bodak, and Bodak worked with over 50 world champions, and Chuck was the Olympic coach for Muhammad Ali. Let's talk about everything that you might be missing with your jab. Even if you've been boxing for a very long time, make sure you listen to this, because it might be another perspective at the very least, or maybe even lesser, a reminder of what you forgot. So often we'll go through our journey as boxers, as coaches. We'll learn so much, we'll gain so much, but we have a leaky mind. There's stuff falling out the back end and we forget things, and that's okay. But that's where doing stuff like this and going through this is very important. That's where I also have such a passion for teaching and coaching, because it helps reignite some of those things. And also, heck, it helps me almost learn in a sense. So it's very powerful. That's where it's so important for your progression as a boxer, I think, to also do some teaching and coaching. All right. So first off, we're going to talk about the throwaway jab. But before we do, let's talk about what a throwaway punch is. A throwaway punch simply means that it's not meant to score or knock somebody out, right? That's a throwaway. So it can still hit a target area. It can still essentially be a real punch, but it's just not meant to score, meaning it has that much power and force behind it, or it's not meant to knock somebody out. All right, so let's clarify that. Now, there are other types as well, but let's run through it. I kind of chunked it into two categories of throwaway jabs. Let's talk about the first category, which is that it actually connects the target. So it actually touches, let's say, a face. Your knuckles actually touch the face, but it's a throwaway because you're doing it lightly or slowly. All right. And it could be light and slow, or just slow, lightly touching. I guess that's two things together. But regardless, the idea is that it's a throwaway. So it's not meant to do that, but it's meant to score, but it's meant to accomplish other things. What are the things it can accomplish? It can accomplish you establishing your range. Now, why would you not want to throw a real jab? More often than not, I have trouble with boxers that are really enthusiastic about boxing. They honestly do too many throwaway jabs and not enough real jabs. So to be very clear, the real jab trumps the throwaway jab by multiples, but there's uses for throwaway jabs, and that's why we're going to talk about it. Because as you get that real jab down, I'm assuming you are, then this is where this stuff applies. Gauging your range. You can do that with a real jab, but you can do that with a throwaway jab. Why? Because sometimes the throwaway jab, you're just reaching out, and therefore it's less telegraphed. The timing is different. It's harder to see, and it can throw your opponent off. So it can still tell you where your range is and how far you are, if you are there for a real jab, but also allows you to tell you your range on your twos and your threes and everything else. Then it can also help you change your range. It can help you get a little bit away, but it can also help you inch closer. You can just do a little throwaway jab like that, touching as you slightly walk your feet in, and motion hides motion. That motion hiding motion allows you to get closer, and they might not even recognize. It distracts them, keeps their eyes on that, keeps their mind thinking about this thing that's touching their face, interfering with them a little bit, and it can help you control their range and stop their range if they attack, because you already have the arm out there. And even if it's not stiff, the arm out there is interference and can play interference. Then it can allow you to set up the hard jab, because if every time or oftentimes I see you move your lead arm, your jab hand, and it's not popping me, it's just touching me, and it's nothing that I want to worry about, then when it does snap, I've minimized the threat in my mind, and then it catches me, and then, oh my gosh, then it did snap and it was a hard jab, and now I'm concerned about it. Or you hit me off of it, now I'm concerned about it, and I'm starting to get a little bit frantic. And again, when we do head punches, remember, we're controlling their thinking. Whether it's a hard punch or a light punch, we're controlling their thinking. When we do body shots, typically they may be hard body shots, we control their breathing. Now let's talk about the no-hit throwaway jab. So this throwaway jab does not touch a scoring area like the face, but it has other purposes. It distracts. So it's out in the air. It's maybe going on the side, things like that. Then it might be occupying a hand. It's tapping a hand, controlling a hand. Think about you as an orthodox against a southpaw or vice versa. You're controlling their lead hand, taking away their jab, right? And maybe sneaking over the castle walls to land your jab, perhaps, to go under or over the walls, all right? And then it also, again, is just out there in the ether, serves as a range stopper. It's going to be a barricade that stops them from coming forward. Now, let's talk about the multi-jabs. I got to talk about it. I did a whole video about a year ago talking about the multi-jab strategy. Make sure you check that out if you haven't already, or go back and revisit it. But remember, if we can do one of something, why not do 2 or 3 or 4 of it? All right. I'm not going to get into all the minutiae on that because I have done that in many other videos. But with multi-jabs, there's something I want to talk about. There's 2 types of multi-jabs. All right. And I've helped a lot of different people I've worked with do this, whether it's in person or on my elite level custom program that I do with people online across the world, where how they set it up is they go on the Patreon page, we connect, I give them a questionnaire, and then we do an eval period for a week. I review all of their training. They film all of it. I go through it and make the adjustments, also review sparring footage and fight footage if they have fights, and then help tweak their training to find where the greatest opportunities are and the greatest holes, and we fill them together and progress, and we've already had a lot of success. It's been a wonderful thing. But with the multi-jab, this simple tweak can be a big one for you. As a shorter person, longer person, mid-sized person, do both of these. Do full extension jabs, meaning it's fully out, fully back on multi-jab, and you can do that fast, pretty fast, like that snapping. And then also do the half extension. That's typically, the second one's typically what people do naturally, but natural is not always better. Sorry to break it to you. Natural is not always better, specifically in boxing. But that's important because then that alone is changing the timing of your multi-jabs, right? From bam, bam to ba-bam. And that little time difference is enough to disrupt. If someone can get the timing on your multi-jabs, right? Let's say you do double jabs and triple jabs as a tendency, then they can find the counters in between those punches and defend them more accurately. But if the cadence of those jabs is different, accomplished by how much you bring the arm back, then you're causing them problems. And then, of course, as a longer person, the half extended jab, multi-jab tends to be better just because there's a built-in wall now that you're not letting them come all the way back to you. But there is a case for both, or being able to do both, all right? Then off of the multi-jabs, being able to mix in the head and the body, very important. Because remember, if you just do multi-jabs for the head, easily countered by a good enough boxer. But by simply adding that extra variable of head and body work, it's a phenomenal change. And remember, with the half extension, you can half extend to the head or extend to the head, come back halfway, drop down for the body. And where does the power come? It comes from the snap and the squeeze, but also it comes from the step. You can create a lot of power on the step, all right? And then that leads me to the next one, being extended and then throwing, having that jab already out there, and from this position, stepping in and snapping up with the shoulder and the hand on the jab makes power. It's an amazing thing. You're taking the jab, and that's the way you make a jab a 6-inch punch or a 4-inch punch even, is to have it already out there. You're not fully extended, but really like 4/5 of the way, right? And then snapping it at the end, jerking the shoulder at the end, and stepping with it at the same time. Decreases the time on the jab, and it's a great move to do. Typically as a mid-height and taller fighter, but you can utilize it at any size. Then let's talk about jab placement. All right, because when people think about the jab, they think pretty binary. They think of head and body, typically. Or a lot of people just think head and they chase the head all day long. But let's talk about all the different target areas, all right? So first off, you have the jaw, right? Tip of the jaw, tip of the chin, really, and nose area. And that's a very, 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 very good place. And you want to get very good at aiming for that. Too often I see people not be so accurate with aiming for that, and there's a hole in their opponent, and they're not taking that hole. You can bust someone up pretty bad in the jaw and the nose with a jab. You can even break someone's nose with a jab, especially when you step with it and you learn how to throw it and you practice it enough and you have the right timing on it. And you can even buzz somebody, and you can do a hard jab. I think I've highlighted in some of my other videos of the hard jab. Who was it? Was it the last Charlo fight? I think it was, or something like that. He has a good jab, and that hard jab buzzed his opponent a little bit. That's what set up the rest of the fight and the knockout. You already concussed them, at least gave them a subconcussive injury, but you already concussed them. And then when you hit him with another shot, if someone already has a concussion, it's easier to give it to them, easier to get them out of there, right? Very important. Now, you have the body jab. Typically going for the sternum is a very, very, very good place to go for with that jab. And then also, right below it, the stomach can be good as well. But again, it's easy for someone to keep that core tight. But that hard stabbing jab right for the sternum, very good target area to place. Shooting for the chest. Now, this is not meant to necessarily score, but it is to keep them off balance. It is to answer for someone that is moving their head, because if someone's moving their head and you're chasing the head, you're probably going to miss them a lot. But if you just drop it down a little bit for the chest, you're going to stabilize them, control them, and shut down counters, right? Control their balance and everything else, as well as just keep them occupied as a barrier. And then you can jab the hands, of course, right? So jabbing the lead hand, jabbing the rear hand, it's going to be hard for them to hit you with that hand if you're keeping it occupied, or at least harder. But one thing though, one caveat though, that you really need to watch out for, because I just had somebody that was newer doing this when I took a whole crew of my people down to a gym in Atlanta, is it's a weird thing that crops up every now and again I see with newer guys. And sometimes really like just newer, novice, meaning you've been boxing for a couple years, is jabbing someone else's lead hand and you're both in the same stance, all right? So you're orthodox and orthodox, you both have your left arm forward, and you're jabbing over to their jab. You doing that as a default can simply be something you do 1 out of 5 times, 1 out of 10 times. That's appropriate. You doing it 5 out of 5 or 4 out of 5, very, very, very not beneficial, because you're opening yourself up for a right hand counter, because now you're creating that pathway, right? If I'm jabbing over here, then I'm not interfering so much with this hand. I'm here. Sure, I'm taking away their jab, but now I'm just giving them their right hand. And I don't see it being used as a problem too. It's one thing if you jab over there one time, like I said, and then you jab straight down the middle, so you get them used to jabbing over there, and then you score the jab over. Cool, I can't argue with success. If you do that, brilliant. But just constantly going for that left hand like they're hitting mitts. It's almost like I think it's a carryover or leftover from somebody almost bringing mitt work into boxing, right? Because that standard way to hold mitts is hit the left to left and the right to right. So watch out for that. That's again another reason why with mitt holding, I'm very big about generally, not always, but generally having the 1 and the 2 hit the same mitt. Why? Because you box a one-headed person, not a two-headed person, and you want to build up that accuracy, because part of being a good boxer and being a good puncher is having good accuracy. So if you can line that jab up and have the right hand hit right where that jab hits, that's the real deal. That's how we do it with the 1-2 on a mitt versus slightly on one side, slightly on the other side. No matter how good you hold it, it ends up becoming slightly on a different side. Some guys are really good at getting right down the middle. Boom, boom. I've gotten good at that. I can do that at times, but too often you'll see it like this, where it's crossing. No bueno. Not a fan of it. All right. Now, jabbing for the shoulders. You can jab for the lead shoulder. Use that to open them up for the right hand and for other punches for your 2, as well as control and shut down counters. And then last one is jabbing to the side with our jab placement. Alluded to that earlier with the throwaway jab, but bringing it out here with our placement of, if you're jabbing to, let's say, someone's right side, guess what? Now that classic slip they want to do to the outside of the jab, it's going to be hard to do, because they can feel, if I move my head over there, that jab's coming slightly on that side, I'm going to dump right into it. So now they might go deeper, might get out of position, and at least you take away that option. Very powerful. Then there's a few more types of jabs I want to touch on before we wrap it up, guys. So we have the backhand jab. So really that's the Whippy jab. Very, very good. And there's a few benefits of that. Now, of course, you can backhand a little bit of this punch, even though you're technically not supposed to backhand with a jab, but you can whip it and turn it over right at the end. And it's a nice way to learn how to throw a snappy jab that does definitely cause some cracking, a little bit of hurting, and interference. And one thing that I like about it as well, that some people don't quite think about, is that when you're doing that Whippy jab, it bothers and can interfere with someone's head movement, because now the jab isn't coming straight, it's coming from a little bit of the side across almost, because that's what's creating that whip motion. And because of that interference over on your right side, their left side, it can take away them wanting to slip their head that way. right? So you have the jab off to the right side of their head, to their right side, your left side. You can take away their classic slip they do. The whippy jab can almost follow them over to that side and control them, but it almost creates like a bar style jab versus that straight pinpoint jab, which can make the lateral head movement not as effective. Then you have the up jab. Up jab is brilliant for a couple reasons. One is energy conservation, right? You're shooting that jab from low. No, it's not some special move you need to like, I don't know. I see like videos, how to up jab. Yeah, you put your hand down and you throw the jab from there, right? That's all it is. But the benefits of it is that it's out of the field of vision, right? From what someone expects a jab to come from. And that alone can change timing and change anticipation of it. And I've seen it play out time and time again where someone can stop a standard jab, but when someone starts shooting a jab from a different angle, like from a lead hand low or kind of whipping it across, it changes it. And now that one jab they had the answer for, they don't have the answer for this one. But then also another beautiful thing it does as well is it shuts down someone bobbing oftentimes. Someone that tends to dip a lot, if you up jab, the jab is again now coming up from that lower trajectory. So you're really almost going into it as it's coming at you. Same thing with the jab that's whipping across, that's creating kind of a bar. If you do some lateral head movement, then the arm is still perhaps going to play into connecting to your face and the hand. But now remember with the up jab, of course, like I'm probably going to see people say in the comments, make sure you're realizing that you're watching out for the right hand counter coming over the top of that. Again, assuming that you're a decent boxer and you know how to properly defend against that. But then also remember as well, you're not just simply the whole freaking boxing sparring session or fight doing up jabs nonstop necessarily. You're mixing all of these things together. And what I love about talking about all this, before I hit my last point on the jab, is that to fully flesh out this one weapon, right? Because you can have something and have a tool like a jab, but not fully utilize it. And you use it in 1 or 2 or 3 ways. And you're like, this is all there is with this thing, right? And now granted, you're not as good as the 3 ways you're not as good as you could be using it the 3 ways that you know how to use it. That's where I've done a lot of content talking about that. But hopefully what I find with going through these kind of deep dive and dissecting talks like this on a punch is that it allows you to then spark up and get even more appreciative of how important the jab can be and how versatile it can be and how effective it can be. And then when you start mixing these things together, now this weapon that was one thing is now a weapon of 10 things. And that creates uncertainty in your opponent. And the more uncertainty you can create in your opponent, the more control you can have in a fight. All right, the last thing, very last thing with the jab is it being a defensive weapon. That jab, that lead arm being out there with your chin behind the shoulder, that creates a lot of defense right there that alone can take away a lot of people's punches. And then as well, if your hand is on their head, if your fist is in their face, you're controlling their head. And when you control someone's head, you control their body. It's going to be hard for them to generate power if their head is pushed back a little bit. So very important concept. That wraps it up. Click on that form below, fill that out. Also, if you want to work with me, click on the Patreon page because I have that custom elite program. Love to work with you. Again, take you through an eval period, figure out where the highest leverage is and the holes are that we need to fill to help you get to the next level. So if you're struggling with your training at all and you feel like you need that extra edge, love to work with you. You've already had a lot of success stories. And then last thing, if you want to turn your passion into a profession, I've helped so many people take their love of boxing and actually be able to make it their full-time career and make a great living off of it like I have. And so click on the Patreon page, message me there, or find me on Instagram at Coach Keith Keppner, and look out for the next video, guys.